Hello everyone and welcome to my top 10 list of abstract strategy games. To get this list, I went onto Board Game Geek and filtered by abstract strategy, so if any of the games on the list today don't meet your criteria, well, blame Board Game Geek. And there is a slight spoiler here. To add a bit more variety into the list, I made sure to only include one of the three Azul tiles. Which one? Well, you'll have to keep watching to find out. Anyway, without further ado, let's see what is my number 10. My number 10 is Tiny Towns. Now, in this game, it's all about spatial placing of cubes onto your small gridded board. Either you're going to have all the players on their turn saying a type of material or coloured cube, and you're adding it to your grid. There's also another way where a sort of a card gets flipped from a deck. And then basically everyone's putting that colour down and trying to make it into a sort of almost Tetris shape polyomino pattern. It could be sort of an L shape or an X or a line or something like that to make a variety of buildings. And there's a number of buildings, and that only increases with the expansions. Now, why this is number 10 is probably because I absolutely suck at the game. The idea of it, to me, I really like the idea. I just really struggle actually getting the cubes in the right places. And as my friend Dwight would probably happily point out to me over and over again, the first time I ever played this, I was incredibly close to getting minus points. It was definitely single-digit score for me there. So that first play, I think, would put some people off because you can really screw yourself over. If you put a cube in the wrong place, you can't just get rid of it. It stays there and you're going to have to work around it. And that's what I did. I think that could put people off. But once you get past that, once you start realising, okay, if I'm putting these in that place, I want to leave these spaces free for that colour cube. Maybe on my turn I'll be saying it. But other people might be able to see you're building that type of building and not say that colour. It depends what group you're playing with, whether that's going to happen or not. But either way, Tiny Towns is a great game. Just don't be put off by a bad score in the first couple of playthroughs. My number 9 is Blue Lagoon. Now, there is sort of something quite special about the way Blue Lagoon plays. At the start of the game, you are playing out your sort of pieces and then your huts onto these lovely sort of vibrant board of water and islands and stuff like that, and you're trying to collect these resources. Partway through the game, however, there's almost a complete reset. So you're going to do sort of like a halfway house scoring, and that's why I really like this game, because yes, it's very important what you do up till that point, because only your huts stay on those islands. And that means that where you've placed them is your starting points for the next round. And that becomes really quite important if you've got sort of on one island, if you're trying to compete with someone else, whereas someone else has like a free island to themselves, they can start going and getting these resources a lot easier. And potentially you have started really close to some of the spawn points effectively for resources. And it's one of those games that feels very different because it's got that real sort of first half, second half feel. Like a bit with Tiny Towns, in that first game you can screw yourself over by not doing well in that first half. It's not a game where, right, you've lost the first half but you might be able to win it back in the second. That is very possible, but you don't want to put yourself out of contention. You need to sort of at least be kind of close to your opponents, because otherwise you can be left behind if they've done really well and got really good placements to start the second half off. You could be in with some problems, but it's a really nice, easy game to teach. You know, on a turn, you're basically putting a token down of some kind onto the board and trying to either link a lot or to gain a token from the board, maybe sort of block your opponent off when they're trying to make big stretches of tokens. So, you know, you can quite easily teach the game and play it, and then everyone understands, right, I should have done that in the first half of the game. Or you can just play the first half and score it and be like, right, this is how the second half would go, but now you know, let's reset and go again properly. So really enjoy Blue Lagoon. My number 8 is Quirkle. Now, there are multiple versions of Quirkle. There is a travel version, which I have not played, and then there is like a main big version with chunky tiles. There's even a dice version, but I think that is quite different. Basically, it's a game where you are trying to add either a colour or a load of shapes to a row. So, for instance, there are 6 colours and 6 shapes. So if I have made a row of a couple of circles, on that row or column, depending on where it's placed, you can only add other circles. Now, you can't add ones of the same colour that have already been added, so you'll get effectively a row or column of, eventually, of a perfect 6, if it's not blocked off, of each colour of a shape, or each shape of a single colour. Now, why this is important is as you add tiles to it, you're going to get points for how many it's sort of in a row and column of. So if you play your cards right, you'll actually be able to get it, place a tile or a couple of tiles so that you are doing both rows and columns at the same time, doubling up the amount of points that you can potentially gain. Then there is Quirkles themselves. So when you're adding that 6th tile, that 6th say diamond, or the 6th yellow tile down, then you're getting the Quirkle. That is 6 points because it's 6 tiles along, and then a bonus 6 because you've completed the set. Now this is important because it's going round the table. You don't want to leave many opportunities there that are basically 5 long. So you end up holding on to certain tiles, sort of being, right, I've got 2 circles, but if I place them down, that's a 5 circle run. Someone else could just sweep in with that final colour of circle and sort of nab those bonus points. So you kind of hold out some, you play a load of tiles, draw from the bag and hope you get that last one. And then eventually sometimes you go, okay, I'm not going to be getting this from the bag. Let's play those, because then I'm drawing 2 tiles from the bag and I'm hopefully going to get some good variety there. Now, it's quick, easy, again, another one that's nice and easy to teach. People aren't going to get too confused, though you will, over the course of that first game, really start to understand when you want to play tiles and when you want to hold on to them. There's a points for sort of emptying your hand at the very end of the game first. So that's sort of an extra thing. You can sort of try and be like, oh, I think they're looking to play something big. Right, let's try and get these down quickly once the bags run out. But yeah, Quirkle, it's one of those ones that it looks like very much of a puzzle, and it is very much a puzzle, but you have to pay attention to what the other players are doing. There's not so much a heads down because it's a central placement. Everyone's placing this middle bit, and if you leave an opportunity, someone else can definitely swoop in and get a lot of points for it. Anyway, that's Quirkle. My number 7 is Mandala. Now, this is a quite quick 2-player only abstract strategy game, and it's got this lovely cloth board. It's not really a board, it's literally cloth. It's like a tea towel that you dry dishes up with. You place that in the middle of the table, and then you're going to be playing these square cards, horrible to shuffle square cards, into the 2 mountains on it. So, ignoring how badly shaped the cards are, because it is a good game, basically you're going to have a hand of cards, and it's all based around the colour. The colour is going to determine sort of, when you win your first of a colour, it determines how much you're going to score for it, between going up from 1 to 6 points. So, you've then got the choices of right, so red, it's only going to score me 1 point, but I could get a load of them and score, you know, 5, 6, 7 points by winning one of the mountains. Or if I hold out and then eventually pick up a red, but pick up a lot of reds, it could be worth, each red could be worth like 4 points. And all of a sudden you're like, I've got a lot of choices in this one. The way the colours make the game work is really impressive in this one. So you've got the 2 mountains, and it's basically like you've got 2 options of play at all time. There's cards in the middle of those mountains, and that's what you're trying to win. Anytime you or your opponent adds cards to that middle, you're sort of adding to the potential pool of cards that you're going to win. Then there's the fact that if there's none of a colour on a mountain, your side, your opponent's side, or in the middle, you can play it to the middle to add it to that pool, or to your side, because adding cards to your side is going to be what helps you to win the cards in the middle. You can start to see towards the end of the game what colours your opponent wants, because you can see how much they're scoring for each colour. You can see, okay, you're going to be scoring 5 points for every black card and 4 points for every orange. This mountain has a lot of orange and black on it. I am not going to let you win that. So you're going to be, you know, almost just playing every turn cards there to make sure you win it, and trying to work out when that 6th colour is going to be played, because that's when that's going to be decided. And then you're almost forgetting the mountain over here, so your opponent can sort of swoop in and maybe steal some still good cards for them over there. The game basically ends when one person has got the 6 colours, and then you're going to be pointing up, and you can, because of your score piles face down, you can kind of remember and kind of know, I've got a lot of like these colours in there, but it's quite hard to realise how many points you're on and how many points your opponent is on until that final part where you turn them over and you count them out, like, the reds, they're worth 2 for me, but they might be worth like 1 for your opponent and stuff like that. So throughout the game there's that tension of not knowing how well your opponent's doing, but seeing what they could be going for from their side of the board, and then trying to manipulate these 2 mountains at the same time for you to win the cards, but also for your opponent definitely not to. Anyway, that's Mandala, a really fun card game. My number 6 is Reef. Now, there is a newer version of this, but I don't think, apart from a few colour changes, there was really that many changes in the 2nd edition. Basically, it's a game where you are building up your reef, and the patterns that you're going to create, be it how many high the reef pieces are, or sort of just patterns on the board, that's how you're going to score points. Well, that seems fairly standard, but what makes this interesting is the dual purpose cards. Now, it's not a choice, do I do the top part, which is take new coral pieces and add them to my reef, and it's not, you don't get the choice between doing that or scoring, you do both. Now, these cards are done very nicely in terms of basically whatever you're getting from the top is almost certainly not what you're going to be scoring for at the bottom. And therefore you get these choices when you're taking these cards into your hand and then actually playing them. If I can do this in the right order, if I play that one, I'm going to get some red pieces and that, and I can't score that one, but at least I've got these nice reds, because then I can play this card, and now I've got the reds in the right places to score a lot of points while I'm adding these tiles. So there's a really nice aspect of, I want this card for the pieces, and I then need that card for the scoring of those pieces. And then if you can get them in the right order, at times you are taking pieces, scoring this, while you're building up for a bigger score later on. Because some of the patterns are really simple, and you can, just quite easily get 1 or 2 of them out and score 1 or 2 points. And then at other times, it's like, right, for every time I get a red on a 3 or 4 high coral reef piece, then I'm going to get like 4 points. So if I can do that progressively throughout these, like play a turn card, play that card, holding on to this scorer that's going to get me loads of points, and then eventually you throw it down, you get a load of points, And hopefully that's going to be enough for you to win the game, because other people will be just sort of playing the cards quite quickly and just cycling through to get lots of small points. So can your one big points beat them? It looks really nice on the table. Again, I think the newer version just tweaked some of the colours. I didn't have a problem with that. I don't know if it was a colourblind issue, but I think that has been slightly tweaked. But they are really nice, chunky plastic coral pieces. They go on the cardboard player boards, which are, they're decent. Generally, it looks stunning. A lot of people walk past this one and, ooh, what's going on there? That looks kind of cool. And all the pieces stack really quite satisfyingly on top of each other on your board. Anyway, that's a great game, and that is Reef. My number 5 is, to me, probably the closest to not being an abstract strategy game, but it is in certain aspects. It's got a lot of push your luck, and that is Soro. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Obviously, it's got like the silent T on the front. Basically, it's a game all about trying to stay in until the end. You've got like a little stone, like pebble thing that's going to start at the edge of the board. There's a seas version where you're a little ship. It's effectively the same game though. Basically, on your turn, you play a tile from your hand, and these tiles have wiggling and winding paths. You place it in front of your player piece, and then you move your player piece along the route that it must follow. And that's very important. It must follow that. Then, if someone else's player piece just happens to have now been, on the edge of your new tile, it also follows the path that it must. Now, this is really important because first of all, the order is important. You move first, which means you can send yourself off the board, though you're not allowed to do that on purpose. But then moving someone else's, you could potentially put them into a very bad positioning, or you even just send them straight off the board if you've linked up these wiggling routes. Now, yes, there's a lot of luck from what tiles you're drawing, but it's kind of that good, silly fun in terms of, right, I'm playing this, I'm wiggling all the way over to here on the board, and then someone else plays, and they're over here, and they end up just one tile across because they didn't, add much. And then it's like, right, I need to be in this area because there's a lot of empty room for tiles, and if I'm over here where all the tiles are already placed, chances are I'm going to end up playing a tile that's going to screw me over and send me off the board. You can't just put a tile in front of another player where you're not to sort of screw them over, because it has to go in front of you. So there is that sort of caveat of you always could be screwing yourself over first before other people, so you have to really be quite careful with that. You get some lovely patterns on the board as the tiles are played out. I do personally think that the original Soro looks probably the best for this. I just like the colour pattern, but the ships and the blue water and that do look very nice in the sequel. But yeah, it's one of those ones that works really well with sort of a couple of people, or 4 or 5. I think it goes up to 6 or maybe even 8 players. That would be utter chaos. Because you've got a lot of time between your turns, but easily with 4 people, this is an absolutely sort of phenomenal, sort of just quick lunchtime. You don't have to think too much. Play a tile and they go here, but at another time you can really play it, right, I'm going to play this because that's going to allow me to go here. The next tile, just a little bit along, and slowly snake your way along sort of the edge of the board while other people are sort of crisscrossing and interacting and probably sort of mucking each other's game up. So you can be tactical, and I think that's where some of that abstract strategy comes in. But anyway, it's a brilliant game. It's not any higher because it's loosely abstract strategy. Anyway, that's Soro. My number 4 is one of those games where you could play it in its own location, and that's Santorini. Now, I think most people have heard of playing Carcassonne in Carcassonne. I wish I could also play Santorini in Santorini, because the game captures sort of the look of the place quite well with these sort of striking white buildings with the blue domes on top. But putting what is a phenomenal production aside, it's a really solid game underneath. Now, even just playing the basic game where you are playing and you're trying to slowly build up and get to a certain height to win, that's good. When this game really gets fun though is getting the God Power cards. There's a load of them in the box. You know, it's not like you need an expansion or anything. It feels like it's an expansion. It feels like it's an okay, solid, interesting game where you've got opportunities to move your two people around and move them up and down and things like that. It's a solid game, and then you've got this sort of these God Powers which once you've played once or twice, you're going to want them. Basically, it means your abilities and your opponent's abilities slightly differ. You know, potentially they can win in a completely different way, and you need to know that. You need to, obviously, you know what God Power they've got, but you need to really pay attention because they could be sort of bluffing by doing something else over here, and you're thinking, oh, I need to stop that by putting a dome on top. Ha, they can't now get to the top of that third piece. They can't win that way, and then all of a sudden they've moved their other piece over there. Oh, they've won by their special method. Or you've got like a certain power that allows you to maybe build 2 up or jump 2 up, jump down, on different things like that. It's one of those ones where there's so many powers, you're not going to easily sort of know which is your favourite straight away, because sometimes you get a power and you're like, oh, this is pretty weak, and then it's like partway through you're like, oh, I didn't think of using it like that. That's going to be quite effective, you know, maybe for even blocking an opponent's piece in. You know, all of a sudden they can get a piece trapped in because they can't jump up high enough or something like that, whereas maybe you could. And things like that. I really like Santorini. It's one of those ones that if you like a game like chess, then it's got a lot of those sort of logics of movement and sort of looking ahead in turns to be like, your opponent can be here and they're going to be up there, maybe within 2 or 3 moves they're going to do this or could do this. Do I need to stop that, or can I kind of go about my own thing? You know, you're not taking pieces, but you have definitely got that thing of movement on the grid and needing to look ahead of, this is what I want to do in the next couple of turns, this is what I can do on this turn, okay, let's do that. I also said putting the production quality aside. I don't think that can be ignored. It's an abstract strategy that looks gorgeous. There's no link to, you know, Santorini. There's no link to that theme other than sort of Greek god powery sort of vibe. There's no real link, but it does look really good. Anyway, that's my number 4, Santorini. Number 3 is a game that, to me, I probably should hate because it involves dice, and dice seem to hate me, and they never roll how I want them to, and that is Sagrada. Now, I also have the Sagrada, the Passion expansions, the ones they've released at least, but the base game itself, you don't need all the additions. They just maybe add a wave of freshness into the experience, but you can play a few hundred games quite comfortably, I would have thought, of that base game without ever having a game that really feels too samey. Basically, each round you're going to have a bunch of dice in the middle to draft. You're going to use like the ABBA system, so A, B, B, A player-wise, which is quite a nice way of drafting. I really appreciate that because it means if you go first, you get that first choice of all of the dice, but you know everyone else is going to take all of their dice before you get your second chance. And I think that works really well for these drafting games. There's opportunities to mitigate the luck in terms of there are cards that you can spend, these tokens you start the game with based on your card's difficulty. You can spend those to maybe swap that dice with one from the round tracker, or you could swap one, maybe flip it upside down, so your 6 pipped dice becomes a 1 pipped dice, and things like that. You're placing them onto your Sagrada Familia sort of stained glass window pattern board thing. Some places it needs to be the right colour, some places it needs to be the right number. You cannot place the same number or colour next to each other, at least up, down, left, right, but you can diagonally. And you're trying to fill this board. Now that can be enough of a puzzle sometimes in its own, because you're trying to be, right, I can put a green here, that has to be a green though, so that's diagonal, that's fine. But then I've surrounded that green now with numbers. So now it can't be a 5, a 3, a 1 or a 2. So I now need a green that's 2 specific numbers, and that's going to be a lot harder to. That's when you need the powers, and that's where part of the fun comes from. Then on top of that you add the scoring conditions. Now in the base game everyone gets 1 card that you keep secret, and that gives you a colour basically. So maybe I am the sort of yellow player, for instance. Every time I take a yellow dice, effectively I'll be scoring points at the end of the game based on their pip value. So that's a secret objective. So maybe I want to keep taking as many yellows as possible, but that's going to be quite hard to fit on my pattern board. And then there's 3 objectives for everyone to score. Now that could be have every single dice in a row or a column be a different colour or be a different number, or score for every pairing of 1 and 2 pipped dice on my board. And then it's like, okay, so I want to take that yellow because I'm the yellow player and that's going to score me points. But then I'll have to probably place that there on my board, because otherwise that will screw my placements up for everything else. But I've already got a yellow in that row, and that will mean I can't score that objective. So you've got not like a point salad amount of points you can earn, but enough that you're constantly thinking, okay, if I take that dice, I can put it there and score points for this objective, but that's going to maybe stop me scoring another one. And then sometimes you can get those perfect ones that are going to align and score multiple objectives. And it's really fun the way you can basically build up this pattern into point scoring. And at the end of the game, you're going to lose points for if you've not managed to put in, if you've got gaps, you know, basically you've got a hole in your stained glass window. Quite thematic that they're not happy with that, and you lose points for that. And then for all of these objectives, you're going to get points as well. This is certainly one of those ones you can go back to over and over again, fulfilling that puzzle with just maybe different scoring objectives or different abilities, because sometimes they can really change the game up. Even if you're playing it back to back, it feels like a completely new puzzle. Now, interaction-wise, yes, you're taking from the same pool, but otherwise, most of the time, your head is down on your puzzle board. So there's not too much interaction, apart from I'm going to take a dice that you might need. There's also a lot of chance for analysis paralysis. You know, you can be stuck there potentially for a while thinking, oh, if I take that one, it could go there, or there, or there, and that one, and I could use that power to flip and rotate or whatever. So if you suffer from really thinking through every option and really slowing that down, the sort of the nice fast pace of take dice, place it, and that would fall out of the game. And that would probably not be good. But, you know, if you really like your puzzles, then yeah, Sagrada's a good one for you. My number 2 is the Azul game for the list. Now, I could have gone for the original, and if I wasn't doing sort of for variety's sake, the original probably would have made the list as well. I don't particularly enjoy Stained Glass of Sintra as much as the other two, though it's still a good game. I still very much enjoy it. It's just got maybe some different gamery choices that I don't think lends itself to Azul. But for me, Summer Pavilion is the best of the trilogy, unless they make more. Now, as with all Azuls, the way you pick tiles is from the centre. There's coasters each round, and you take all of one colour from one of those coasters on your turn and slide the rest into the middle. Or you take all of one colour from the middle once there's tiles there. This creates interesting choices because you can kind of see what colours other people are going for. And in Summer Pavilion, there's the extra interest because there are wild colours, and each round a different colour. So for instance, like the first round might be purple. So if you take, say, 2 reds, if there's a purple there as well, you could also take 1 purple. Now these don't get instantly added to your board, they get just put off to the side until all of those tiles from the middle are taken, including the sort of the big pile in the middle. Once all tiles are taken, going around in order still from whoever's got the first player marker, you're going to be placing your tiles onto your board. Now, when it comes to actually putting the pieces on your board, there's a couple of extra bits of interest. Now, depending on where you play the tiles, for instance, if you're playing just a single red, you put it into the one red slot and that's going to get you 1 point. Unless it's adjacent to other reds, and that's going to score you extra points. So if 3 reds are then adjacent, when you've played that, you're going to get 3 points. So you can really build up if you keep focusing on one colour. Then there's also parts of the board that if you cover all, place tiles in all of the spaces around it, you get to take a bonus tile from the central board, and you can kind of keep an eye out and see what colours you want from that. If you're going for those, say, oranges, you could take that from that board, and it just works really nicely in terms of taking these tiles from that central board to then further help you build out all of the colours on your personal player board and scoring a lot of points. You can really have turns where it's I'm placing this one, then this one, then this one, and I've got, you know, you've got loads of points on that single turn. Then the next round happens. There's a distinct number of set rounds. There are 6 rounds, so you know the game length is pretty consistent. And then at the end of the game, you've got bonus points for the completed stars. So if you've got all 6 spaces of a single colour done, as well as covering all the ones. So there's a little bit of intrigue until the end of who's got the most points as well. It's just generally, it's really good. And it's a little bit more forgiving because each round you can save up to 4 token tiles from one round to the next. It's forgiving, but it also gives opportunities to hold on to what will become the wild colours, and there's a little bit of interest there of, oh, I could be playing these yellows, but in the next round they're going to be wild. So if I hold on to them, I could then use them to play my blues easier and stuff like that. It's got a lot of great choices, and I think you're not going to go wrong with Azul or Azul Summer Pavilion. I just think, for me, the few extra little bonuses that you can get on your turn in Summer Pavilion just help some turns feel bigger and more impressive as a result. My number 1 abstract strategy game, it had to be, as soon as I started making this list, it went in at number 1, and that is Onitama. Now it's one of those games that it gets me excited talking about it, even though to some people it probably doesn't sound that fun. Well, it scratches the chess-like itch for me really, really well, and it has that modern twist of movement cards. If you've not played, it's got this lovely neoprene mat that you put down. It feels, straight away, with that and the students and the masterpieces, it feels like it feels like a masterpiece. It feels like a premium edition straight away. You've got a grid 5x5. You have at the back of your side 4 students, and then in the middle of them 1 master. So if you play chess, it's almost like pawns and a king. But their movement is not determined by the pieces that they are, it's determined by the cards. Now on your turn, what you're trying to do for the game is either take their master with a student or your master, or get your master past and get to the river spot. Now, where you start, that's where your master starts, in the middle, that's where your opponent's master is trying to get to, and vice versa for that river method of victory. But it's not necessarily as simple as just charging down the middle of the board. Like I say, movement is entirely dictated by movement cards. It's got nothing to do with what the pieces are. Now, at the beginning of each game, from the potentially huge deck, if you've got the expansion of movement cards, you shuffle and you draw 5 out. Each player gets 2, and then 1 gets put into the waiting area of one of the players that's going to start the game. So on your turn, you've got these 2 movement cards. Now each movement card's got multiple options. Maybe it's like one is move forward 1 space or move back 2 spaces. Another could be, go forward diagonally 2 to the right, or just 1 to the left. and stuff like that, and you have to pick out of those which card you're going to play and then which movement you're going to take. Now you can't end off the board, you can't end on a space where you are, but if you end up on a space where one of their students are, you'll take it, or the master, you'll take it and win the game. So you're playing these cards and then you're getting the one from your waiting area. Now, we've just skipped possibly the most interesting part of the game, that you are passing that card to your opponent's waiting area effectively. Yes, they've got 2 cards to play, but then once they have played one of those, they will be drawing that card you've just passed to them. What that means is you will, at some point in the game, either pass your opponent the card they need to win, or they will do that to you. So it's really important to know what cards what cards people have, what opportunities they have. Can they move straight forward? No, then you are perfectly fine to stand your master right in front of one of their students and they cannot do anything about it. But if I play this card that's got a straight, like a 1 space forward, all of a sudden I need to move that, because that now it is a concern. Now they could just take it. So it's all about, if I play this movement card, I'm going to be in this good position. But I'm also giving this card, potentially a good card, movement card, to my opponent to use on a future turn. And that, for me, it's a brilliant puzzle, because yes, you could get bogged down. You could get so lost in the, I've got I can move there from my cards, but then if I give this card, my opponent can move there. You could get really slowed down in that. And I think some people probably would. And if you're that sort of player, you probably play hour-long games of chess, and that would be very tedious and boring. But for everyone else that just wants to roughly play a card and move, it's just phenomenal. It's that idea, I'll keep coming back to it, that if I have played this card and given it to you, and you use it to win, I have given you victory. I could have played my other card. I could have never played this card, which means you never would have got it. But me playing it has potentially given you the victory, because that's, at the end of the day, you can only play the cards that are eventually given to you by your opponent. And that's just a really fun aspect of Onitama. Anyway, what abstract strategy games have I missed off the list? What one should I go and play next? Or what one do you really agree with? Or was it way too high on the list, way too low on the list? Let us know in the comment section below. And I'm Oliver East, signing out.